Hello and welcome to the December 4th edition of the Bubb Report. I am the Bubb Report's assistant producer, Rion Charles. From the palatial luxury villas in Lansapine to the new, sleek and contemporary abodes in Mount Egmont and Westerhall, it is safe to say that the Grenadian real estate market is heating up. These expansive, sun-kissed contemporary properties reflect the demand for private housing in Grenada, driven by greater demand for accommodation from the St. George's University community, and by the demand for high-end investment properties spurred by the Citizenship by Investment program. The 2021 Red Book report published by Terra Caribbean indicated that property sales in prime residential locations increased significantly in 2021 at a value of $44.5 million EC dollars. However, some believe that the cost of owning land and property is increasingly becoming more difficult for middle-class Grenadians who they believe are being priced out of the real estate market.
Already the price of land is going up in southern St. George's and so on, where locals are being priced out of the market by CBI projects and CBI individuals who are building houses and so forth and so on. So we're seeing these kind of impacts come already. We're a small island. We've got 112,000 people.
This view is also consistent with a concern that the Red Book report raised in 2021, noting, quote, rental prices have been on a steady increase for some time, unquote. They added, quote, pricing needs to be reviewed, especially for the properties that cater to the local market, unquote. The median price of property doesn't even consider the increasing price of land, which is sometimes quoted in the private unregulated market from $9 a square foot to upwards of $30 a square foot. This week, we present the first in a series of programs on housing and land affordability in Grenada, in which we discuss the state of the real estate market with a panel of experts. Also on the report, that's why I come to free myself, and I don't want to be no one else. Say yo, I come now to free myself. Carriacou, Soca, and Calypso artist Killa B became one of many victims of non-consensual pornography when a sexually explicit video was disseminated without his consent via the social media messaging platform WhatsApp last week. The video, which purports to show consensual fellatio with another consenting male adult, has unleashed a firestorm of homophobic backlash in a society that still views same-sex relationships as taboo and not grounded in biblical righteousness. Another prevailing view suggests that the Soca artist cannot be truthful about his sexuality owing to the socially conservative nature of Grenadian society, which forces him and scores of others to live closeted lives. In fact, music lyrics from Soca artists, social media personalities, and religious figures reflect this conservative worldview.
A lot of young men turning homosexuals. A lot of them. And some of you are married, you're covering it with marriage. Some of you mothers are responsible too, I tell you, you know. Them children in the house, them boys in the house, all they do is just playing on computer, playing games, doing things in the house. Send them outside to get sheep and a goat and a pig. Give them something to do. Give them a piece of land in the back and tell them they have to make some bed and plant tomato and something to do. Their fingernail nice, and they'll like behave like some woman.
No man talking about bullying, are you bullying too much, Jay? All of the stuff together, bullying private, don't come out in the open, that bullying thing, that thing no good, Jay.
Revenge porn also raises the question of the mental health impacts of such privacy breaches, especially on people who come from the LGBTQ demographic of society. We will unpack and make sense of non-consensual pornography, sexual identity, and the entertainment industry in this installment. We welcome our guests, entertainment entrepreneur Robert Ashley Steele, Akeem Abraham, Land Surveyor's Assistant, Kenita Placid, Executive Director of the Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality, and Renee Charles, Vice President of the Grenada Realtors Association. And now, here is our host for this week's program, Dr. Kellon Bubb, with the weekly editorial. We thank you for joining us.
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to one of the penultimate episodes of the Bubb Report for 2022. I'm your host, Dr. Kellon Bubb, and we thank you again for joining us. Now, on December 11th, 2022, the late Ariel Bowler should have been turning 12 had she not been violently murdered at the hands of a cold-blooded serial child molester in St. George's. As the Bowler family readies to observe Ariel's ancestral milestone, yet another high-profile case of indecent assault against a minor is all the buzz in Grenada. This time, it involves an unhinged musical entertainer from the neighboring island of Dominica, who will spend the next 6 months, quite frankly, I believe 6 months is not enough, in jail at the Richmond Hill prison in St. George's. Before him, one Teverson Peters of La Poterie St. Andrews, a self-declared pastor, admitted to forcing a 5-year-old boy to perform oral sex on him. The plot twist was that this particular pedophile was given a slap on the wrist in Grenada, but faced justice in the United States with a stiffer jail time of up to 30 years. Grenada, of course, continues to see an alarming increase in cases of sexual assault against minors. For the first quarter of 2021, the Sex Crimes Unit at the Royal Grenada Police Force recorded 51 reports of sexual abuse, compared to 2020, when there were 33 reports, an increase of a whopping 64.7%. Of that number, the Royal Grenada Police Force was particularly alarmed by the amount of 11 to 16-year-olds who are subject to predatory attacks. In 2021, of the 51 reports received, 26 reports were of the age group 11 to 16, as compared to 2020, when there were 33 reports in the same age range. That is the 11 to 16 age range. Now, Caribbean feminist Michaela Mark says, quote, "One of the most heinous crimes that constantly gets dismissed in the Caribbean and has gone on for generations is the exploitation of young girls by adult men. There are men getting hush money for the molester of their daughters, young girls forced into sex trafficking, and children conceived by rape who are then abused and tossed away out of shame and anger by members of their own families." She goes on to opine that there is an increase of pregnancies between the ages of 10 to 14 in the Caribbean. In fact, those cases of pregnancies in this age range is also due to sexual violence and the manipulation by adult men. Now, in this age group, many of the perpetrators are relatives themselves. Folks, we definitely have to take a more serious and sober approach with respect to protecting our children in Grenada and the Caribbean. Our children are at risk by adult predators in our societies, and we need to do more to ensure that perhaps we can have stiffer penalties for persons who perpetuate these heinous crimes. And at this time, I wish to welcome our first guests this morning for the first panel segment of the week. They are Mr. Akeem Abraham, who is a surveyor, and Renee Charles, who is the Vice President of the Grenada Realtors Association. Now, we felt that this conversation was important because it would appear, anecdotally maybe, that the real estate market in Grenada is hot, as they say. That's a term that they use. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Greetings.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. Good morning, and thank you for having me, Dr. Bubb.
Absolutely. Now, we want to begin with you. They say ladies first, so we'll begin with you, Renee. We want to begin with you by talking about the current state of the real estate market. I had the opportunity to read the Red Book report that's published by your firm, Terra Caribbean. Could you tell us about the state of the current market? Are we seeing an exponential increase in demand for housing in what is considered the prime areas of Grenada? And is that demand also extending to other parts of the island?
Yes. So obviously, we're 2 years or less than 2 years coming out of COVID. COVID had a great effect on the real estate market. But since then, we've seen the numbers steadily increase. So the Red Book covers 2021, and we're coming to an end of 2022 now. And we have seen a similar trend in that the sales, both by volume and by value, have increased, right? But funny enough, COVID actually did Grenada some benefit in that even during 2021, while COVID was happening, we actually saw an increase in demand from our diaspora. And I think that was due to the fact that, Grenada handled the pandemic really well. I think, Grenada was able to show that we handle crisis, going back to Hurricane Ivan and the 2008 recession, and then how we handled COVID. And so we actually saw quite an increase in demand from the diaspora. And that is partly due to what has improved the real estate market in 2021 and in 2022. Mm-hmm. Because when we analyze all of the sales, we actually seeing that more than 80% of properties are actually being purchased by Grenadians, whether it be Grenadians living in Grenada or Grenadians who live in our diaspora and purchase property here. Mm-hmm. So yes, we are seeing trending upward. The numbers are trending upward.
Let us disaggregate that increase in demand from, as you say, the Grenadian diaspora. Mm-hmm. Are we seeing returning nationals? Because I know that in the past, especially in parts of St. Patrick, a lot of Grenadian returning nationals from the United Kingdom in particular, mm-hmm. return home, set up shop, they built their house, but they were all happily retired and were happy to return home. But are we seeing that demand from people who have their tentacles in two places, if you will? People who might be living in the expat community, whether it's in North America, Europe, they're still working, but they also have tentacles in Grenada where they're purchasing property.
Yes, absolutely. We have seen several land sales from people in the diaspora who are in their 30s and 40s, and they just know that at some point they want to return home, so they purchase property here. We have also seen Grenadians in the diaspora who've bought, for want of a better word, vacation homes. So they bought second homes, but they're not mm-hmm. living here. They're living in the US or the UK, but they bought second homes here and they're operating a business, whether it be holiday rentals, mm-hmm. well, mainly holiday rentals, or they may just keep it and then vacation for them and their family. So yes, we are seeing a lot of that. It's not only retirees.
Mm-hmm. Let us talk about, now we had a previous guest here that was teed up in the clip that we showed that mm-hmm. talks about the impact of CBI investors who are mm-hmm. also, by extension of their involvement in the CBI program, naturally invest in real estate. Are we also seeing a demand from that demographic?
Okay. So CBI operates a little differently, right? In that, in order to purchase, okay, so say somebody wants to come to Grenada to purchase, to get their CBI passport, right? They cannot just buy any property that's on the market. They have to buy into a CBI approved project, right? So we're looking at some of the hotel developments, for example, Mount Cinnamon or Silver Sands. There are various CBI approved projects throughout the island. So those people who are purchasing CBI, they have to purchase into one of those approved projects. If it is, they see, say, a lot of land advertised on our websites and they call and they want to purchase, they would have to purchase they can't purchase that and get their passport because it wouldn't be a CBI approved project. Right?
Interesting.
Yes. So
okay, because the talking point is that CBI investors are also contributing to that demand, which then consequently prices locals out of the market. So I'm glad that you explained it that way.
No, if anyone were to go on to Government of Grenada's website under the CBI page, scroll to the bottom and you'll see the list of approved projects. And so in order for one to get their passport through CBI, they have to purchase into one of those approved projects, or they can do, for want of a better word, a cash investment where they don't bother with the property and they just do their application and pay for the passport. But they cannot purchase just any property. Say if I own a lot of land and I decide, hey, I'm selling it today, a foreigner purchasing my land cannot get CBI.
Okay. All right. That is good to know. I'm glad that you demystified that myth.
Yes.
And let me bring in Mr. Akeem Abraham. Brother Abraham, welcome to the program.
Greetings.
Yes, sir. You are a young surveyor, and as I was saying in the green room before we got on air, it would appear as if surveying can also be a family business. I remember the late Michael Dennis Lett. He was a surveyor in St. David, but his son inherited that from him. I understand you have a very similar story. Tell me how you got into the business of surveying, sir.
Yeah, so my father is a licensed land surveyor, and he's been passionate about it from ever since. And naturally, he wants his kids to follow in his footsteps. Since I remember old enough to go out into the field, we've been going out in the field, my brother and I. Later on, I went on to study electrical engineering. But my brother went to study same land surveying in same Jamaica, same school that my father went to. So he's actually a licensed surveyor as well. So, but even if I studied electrical engineering, I do understand the business. So I still do work with my dad in the business. So it's a father and son's company striving to, get things done in Grenada.
That's good.
Cayman Islands, yeah.
Oh, and the Cayman Islands as well.
Yeah,
I like that.
My brother is based over in the Cayman Islands right now.
Okay, very well. All right. Well, if I ever decide to move to the Cayman Islands and buy land, maybe
sure.
You'll give me the hookup there. But let us talk about piggying back on the question that I asked Renee about demand. Are you also seeing an uptick in demand for your services? And if you can talk about what that looks like, yes.
Well, definitely, because the two businesses are correlated. If Renee has to sell a portion of land, she first has to analyze the exact size of the land, the location of the land, and that's where I come in. And I agree with her, something she said about COVID-19 has actually benefited in that area. Because you see, Grenada, yes, we handle it very well, but naturally Grenada is a place filled with a lot of the resources that they told us to use as home remedies. We have the ginger, we have the fresh organic produce here, we have the nice beautiful sun, we have the beaches and everything. Yeah. So I think it motivated a lot of people to gravitate towards Grenada. That's one. Another thing is that when people were coming to Grenada, because hotels and all these things were so locked up, people were now seeking the opportunities through Airbnb. So Airbnb became a bigger thing. And as Airbnb became a more popular thing in Grenada, it now motivated the everyday Grenadian to become a real estate guru or somebody into the real estate business. Even myself, I was motivated to transform the family estate, which was covered in bush, to a Airbnb facility. So I'm working on that right now. And I can imagine a lot of other people transform the little room downstairs, their grandmother old shop, and created spaces so that people can come to Grenada, because people actually want to come to Grenada since COVID-19, because it's relaxing. I think we've really had a great experience with the COVID, and I think everybody saw that and saw our opportunity there.
Yeah. Renee, piggyback on that for us. Would you agree that the pandemic has sort of encouraged folks to spruce up, if you will, flip their properties, flip their homes?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes, I agree with that. A lot of people are more into the quote unquote Airbnb short stay rentals from their home, whether they have an apartment downstairs or they're just a space downstairs that they were not using. So we're seeing a lot more people doing that. And then I think people are just more knowledgeable now than they were before. And so they're looking at ways of how they could use their property as an investment, how they could use their property to help with their finances, So we have seen an uptick in that. There are definitely a lot more Grenadian-owned apartments and homes that are listed for short-term rentals or quote-unquote Airbnb rentals.
Yeah. Akeem, if you don't mind me asking, you said your family estate, where is that located in Grenada?
That is located in a place called Windsor in Birch Grove.
Birch Grove.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's nice and lush and cold up there.
It is very, very lush. If I don't go up there and cut the grass for 2 weeks, covered in bush.
Yes.
There's rain every day.
Very good, very good. Now, so Akeem, and I would continue on here. What about some of the challenges that surveyors have? Now, traditionally and historically, owing to difficulties with estate planning, I know I can speak from my own personal experience, given my family situation in St. David, there were always conflict over where particular boundaries ought to be.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you brought the surveyor in either to resolve the issue or, to just get things properly regularized on paper, if you will, because in many cases, a lot of wills were not necessarily properly done. Things were just said orally. In other words, I leave that for you without anything in writing. So what are some of the challenges you've been having around land surveying in this period in Grenada?
Well, technology-wise, Grenada is a very young nation, very young. Mm-hmm. We still record information in the treasury on paper. So that's one challenge right there, the technology. How they used to measure land before, you hear people talk about they used to just throw a stone and say, okay, there's by you there. And they measured with chain and links. Mm-hmm. That method of measuring the land is not very accurate. So now, when you get a plan stating, let's say 10,000 square feet, because of the methods they used to measure it before, it would actually not be 10,000 square feet. It would be approximate. So now you come with the new technology, the total stations and them, and you get it accurate to an inch, less than an inch. Mm-hmm. So now you might see differences. One time we went and did a survey, the plan said 1 acre. When we did the area within all the other boundaries, we get 1.5 acres. Mm-hmm. So those things happen. And then sometimes you might say 1 acre on the plan and you go and survey and you get just half or 3/4 or something less. So, that definitely is one big challenge, the transferring from the olden times of doing things to now. Mm-hmm. Another problem is documentation as well. Sometimes you go to the treasury and the information is not there. As you said, sometimes the will on them is word of mouth. Sometimes the old sketches on them it's just a sketch, no measurements on it, no proper information to try to get anything done. A lot of times too, they used things like madras, dragon blood trees, immortal trees as boundary marks. Now today, 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now, those things die out. You're not going to find them. And another issue as well is a tree, the base of a tree starts off, let's say about an inch. In 10 years, that inch grows to about a foot, 2 feet sometimes. So how do you determine where exactly the boundaries? That means there's a plus or minus 2 feet where the boundary could actually be. So that usually causes some trouble sometimes. Mm-hmm. That's just a few of the issues.
Very fascinating. Are you finding, though, that your clients are really trying to regularize the situation with their lands, or are you finding that folks are still adopt that old way of thinking around land?
Well, I think there is an issue where people are not educated land surveyor. A lot of people have never seen a land surveyor or understood what a land surveyor does until you have some land dispute. You know,
Yes.
it shouldn't come to that, to be in contact with a land surveyor. As soon as you have a piece of land, if you're not certain on where your boundaries are, you go get a land surveyor. Same as if you're not feeling too well, you go by a doctor instantly. You know, you don't wait till a serious issue to go by the doctor. As soon as you don't know where your boundaries are, you go by the land surveyor and you make sure you know where it is. You make sure your kids know where it is. Make sure your kin, everybody who's potentially going to inherit it, know where it is, so that later in the future you don't end up with issues. Because a lot of times we go to do surveys and it's just the grandchildren who inherited from their grandmother, their mother, and it goes down. So they, as the grandchild, don't have a clue where the land is. All they know is that they have, let's say that they actually do have a will, a proper documented will, but the will does not say exactly where the land is, how much land it is, and all these things. So it's I think we need to start teaching these things. It breaks my heart when I see secondary school children seeing me on the street surveying and saying, "Oh, sir, there's a camera." It breaks my heart because I think at that level we should be teaching these kind of information, how to do your taxes, how to manage finances, these basic things. I think we need to implement these things in the school system so that we avoid these problems. Because if the child know he needs to get his boundary in order before he builds his house, then we would not have people building houses on other people's property in the next 10, 20 years. So I think it starts with the education system.
That is a very critical point you make there about teaching life skills, especially in the context of the Grenadian curriculum. I hope we're still not teaching that Christopher Columbus discovered Grenada, because he didn't. But but seriously though, you are correct. The yachting sector is a major sector in Grenada. Yachting should be taught in schools. We are an island.
Exactly.
How is yachting not a subject?
Exactly. Even swimming. I was speaking to a foreigner the other day. A foreigner from I think he's from Zimbabwe. He said he's never seen an ocean. He's doing distant from the ocean, but it's a part of the school curriculum. Swimming, and they're nowhere close to the water. We live on an island, and we don't teach these things. You know, we need to revamp the education system so it applies to us.
Absolutely. Let me bring in Renee again. Renee, of course, you do work closely here with Akeem, but let us talk about, again, we have always known that the southern to the southeastern corridor of Grenada has been defined primarily as a prime property location for the island.
Yes.
Anecdotally, and based on the report that I read from your company, Redfin, it does appear as if the strictly southern portion of the island, we're talking about True Blue, Lansepine, I'm drawing a blank now, but
Egmont, True Blue, Lansepine, Egmont.
True Blue, yes, those types of neighborhoods there, that we get into a point where demand seems to be saturated in that area, and people are now extending further east or further southeast into the St. David's area. What does your data look like in terms of that kind of movement southeasterly / eastwards into St. David's?
Yes. So, I mean, so historically, obviously, most sales have occurred in St. George's, right?
Yeah.
With about 42%. And then second in line is St. Andrew. But in recent times, you know, especially with the development of projects in La Sagesse, and obviously with the saturation of neighborhoods down in St. George's, you're quite right. We've seen interest start to filter through into St. David's. And so although St. David's is still, you know, the third parish in terms of volume of sales, we're definitely seeing an increase in that. You know, just simply because there's only so much room in St. George's, and people still want to be close to the amenities that you have in St. George's. So St. David's is closest. And I think development will continue to happen. Will continue to happen in that direction. You know, so if it is you're somebody who's thinking, you know, down the future you want to invest in property now that will maybe resell higher in the future, St. David's is a good parish to look at. And even if we were to talk about just sales and rentals as well, people are now slowly coming out of the idea, okay, I must be in St. George's if I want to rent. They don't mind being a little further out, even though they may work in town or work in Grandance. So yes, we're seeing the trend in that direction, and we think it will continue.
Now let us talk about. You say you think that trend would continue. Let us talk about SGU. SGU continues to expand. Every time I go down there is a new building. I've also been noticing a trend of more apartment complexes going up on the island. Is that type of? Are you also into that type of business as well?
Yes, we do all rentals.
Okay.
All rentals, including SG rentals. Yes.
Okay, and I guess those apartment buildings are going up because of that demand, to meet that demand, yes, of the student population.
Yes. So the thing is, yes, SGU is obviously a very big market in the south of the island, and most of the long-term rental accommodation in the south of the island is occupied by SGU students and faculty. However, what a lot of people don't talk about is that we prior to COVID and coming out of COVID, especially since the restrictions were removed, once the airport opened and all the quarantine restrictions and so were released at the end of 2021, what we saw was that companies started bringing in people again to work. So we saw an influx in the expats coming. And so, a lot of the companies here on the ground, they do have non-Grenadians who are part of their team. And those people also rent. So that is actually, along with SGU, that is where a lot of the demand comes from for accommodation, residential accommodation in St. George's and in the early parts, the southern parts of St. David's. So even though you may see those apartment buildings, they're not always 100% occupied by students. They may have some expats living. And then, of course, you have the faculty. A lot of the faculty at SGU are non-Grenadian as well, and they rent St. George's, southern parts of St. David's.
Now, let us get to the elephant in the room, the proverbial elephant in the room. And I think one of our audience, one of the viewers, raised this. She said, imagine you were born in a country where you'll never be able to own a piece of it. Why aren't lands subsidized to nationals? Of course, that's not a question I'm sure you can answer in terms of the subsidy piece. Prime lands shouldn't just be catered to and for foreigners. But that leads us into the question of the impact of increasing demand on the price of land and the affordability of land and property for Grenadians domiciled in Grenada. Obviously, in your report, and I'm going to cite the report now, if I can share that on the screen. You talk about affordability, but in the context of rental prices, and we would get into that. Just give me 1 minute here. Let me tee that up. Let's see here. Yes. So, oh no, that's the wrong screen. That's my script. Hold on. Let's see here. Live TV, live streaming. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. All right. So you say pricing. Rental prices have been on a steady increase for some time. Except for the SGU markets, this has influenced the rate at which some properties are rented. As potential tenants express that the rental prices of some properties are high, most renters seek to negotiate a price that is more, quote, reasonable or manageable for them. Some locals are challenged with high prices. Therefore, they seek more affordable prices and locations. Let us talk about the impact of that increasing demand on the pricing structure. What does pricing structure look like in the real estate industry? Is it based on market forces, or is there a particular formula that you use to determine what price a particular piece of land or property should be sold at?
Right. Okay. So it's speaking of both rentals and sales, or maybe I should categorize them. So to start with sales, so one must remember that we're operating in a free market, right? Mm-hmm. So demand and supply, that's going to affect the pricing. Okay. So essentially somebody who owns a piece of land can literally just wake up one morning and decide, okay, I want to try to sell my land for this price, right? But what would usually happen is that before somebody lists a piece of land for sale, and obviously before somebody purchases land for sale, they would have a valuation done. Okay. When you're getting a mortgage for a property, you have to have a valuation done in order to qualify for a certain mortgage. And so the valuation forms an integral part of basically the price that land would be sold for, right? Because most buyers are getting mortgages in order to buy. Okay. Now, to sort of answer or speak on the guest's concern, the lady's concern, it's because we're operating in a free market, it can be tough, right? Mm-hmm. But as I had mentioned earlier, 80% of properties are still being purchased by Grenadians. And if you had looked in the report, you may have noticed that when we look at residential homes, you still have 50% of residential homes being sold for 500,000 EC and under. And then when you're looking at land, you're looking at land being sold for 200,000 EC and under. Mm-hmm. And added to that, most of properties in Grenada are still owned by Grenadians. So in other words, they're being sold by Grenadians. So there's still a good level of affordability there, right? But of course, one may argue that they may not be able to purchase in a certain location that they want to purchase. But I don't necessarily know if there's anything that we can do about that if we're operating in a free market where you have mm-hmm. demand coming from Grenadians living here, the diaspora, and also foreigners. Mm-hmm. And added to that, I mean, I can't speak by any means from the government's standpoint, but it's not equal for Grenadians to buy land versus for a non-Grenadian to buy land. The foreigners who are buying land here, they incur high taxes. We have an alien's land holding license that's 10% of the purchase price. That's the highest in the Caribbean. So whereas the Grenadian does not have to pay that tax when they're buying. But again, it's a free market, so it's a tough one there because the market is open to demand from all over.
Right. But to the second part of my question, which was pricing. How is pricing determined? Again, understanding market forces. You did mention valuation though, so I think that would account for what that would look like there.
Yes. So when you're talking about pricing in terms of properties that are listed for sale and then the price that properties sell for. So two things. When somebody's listing a property for sale, it's not mandatory, but we highly encourage that they have a valuation done. So that way they are aware of what the market value is for their property. And that is beneficial to everybody because obviously if somebody wants to come and list their land for a very high price, mm-hmm. what is that achieving? It's going to stay years on the market. It can't sell. What's the point? If you really want to sell your land, let's establish what the market value is for that land. And once it's priced properly, by having a valuation done, and then obviously when you speak about valuation, one of the integral parts of evaluation is pulling comps, right? Mm-hmm. So any of the valuers, when they're doing their reports, they have their methods that they use, but an integral part is pulling comps, and comps are similar properties, similar in terms of location and characteristics, and what those properties were sold for. Right? So they have to pull those comps. So if you have, let's say, a flat piece of land in Grenadians with a sea view, when the valuer is pulling comps, they have to look for flat pieces of land in Grenadians with a sea view, similar size, and what were those sold for in the last couple of years. And that helps to come up with the market value, right? Mm-hmm. So we encourage that. Having said that, there are some sellers who just say, you know what, I want to try to get X amount for my land. And then if there's a willing buyer, then by all means, that the property could be sold for that price. But that doesn't happen too often because you find a lot more buyers are becoming savvy. And so they get the adequate advice that they need, about property prices. No one wants to overpay for a property because obviously that's robbing yourself financially.
Yeah.
And so essentially that is how prices are set. And then going back to what I had mentioned about getting mortgages, most people who buy property, whether it is their Grenadians living here, whether it is diaspora, or whether it is foreigners, most get a mortgage, right? And they're getting mortgages in Grenada. And so part of that is having the valuation done, because the bank is not going to overlend for a property.
Absolutely. Akeem, let me bring you back here. Owing to the increasing demand for people to buy and build on land, on vacant land in particular, one of the concerns that I've had and one of the challenges that I've had, which I'm currently dealing with, is getting documents from the registry in St. George's. Every time I go there and I see that, you have, for example, we were trying to get a particular family document from the 1950s. And obviously that's not properly digitized. But I do know that as a surveyor, that is also, I'm of course subjected to correction, but that is also something that you also engage with, verifying documentation and things like that. Have you seen improvements? Because I know there have been moves to sort of digitize the data that's there, but do you think it's moving too slow? Are you seeing improvements in how the registry is dealing with that matter?
I haven't actually been in the registry to do a search myself, but usually that is the procedure. Sometimes you go to do a survey for plot A, right?
Yeah.
But you get on the ground there on the land and there's no boundary marks for plot A. So you need to look for plot B or the one next to plot A to try to use their boundary marks to get to plot A. Now, to find those plans, sometimes you're not getting cooperation from the persons next door. Sometimes they're not there, presumably they can't find the owner. So you go to the registry now to try to get this. First of all, to get information in the registry is a problem, poor documentation and these things like that. Then there's a fee, which is a ridiculous fee. I think you have to pay like $30 per copy to get a copy of this plan. This is a ridiculous fee. Because imagine as a surveyor or somebody trying to get some information, you have to go there and get 10 documents inside it per week. That's a lot of money going out of your pocket right there. Yes, I understand the Treasury needs to make money. The registry needs to make their money. But it needs to be something more efficient. We need to get this thing digitized and online so that it can be something that, because it's public information.
Yeah.
It's public information that everybody should have access. Definitely should have access to it. We need to get this digitized ASAP. So in case a computer gets stolen, because it's apparently a common thing that has happened inside here, we can actually have those information backed up somewhere and these kind of things. It's a problem because you must have this information to go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Let us talk about the master plan, because I know that there is some sort of GIS map master plan for the country. Is that,
well, some
really
areas
set in
have it.
stone?
Some areas have it. You see, like government go decide, okay, we're going to take this plot of land and cut it up so we can make it available for persons to purchase. If they do that as a collective, then they have a master plan created. But if I go and survey and cut out a piece of land for John here, and John uncle now decide he wants another piece of land cut out next to it, that's another surveyor that come there, and another surveyor come here, another surveyor come here. That's individuals' plans for each. Unless we know as a collective of surveyors come together and put those documents together, then we can create a master plan for it.
Okay.
So these kind of procedures, I think, is necessary to implement for us to go forward. When I hear my brother speak about how they do things in the Cayman Islands, things are so simple over there, and it makes it easy. So if one surveyor come, he don't have no problems because it reflects the same information that every other surveyor would have, because they pool all the information together. When I set out a plan for John, it should be registered in a system where that if John neighbor come and register a plan, then we can put those two plans together and create a master plan.
Is it and again, as a follow-up to that, doesn't that exist? I mean, isn't there, how do you surveyors share information, or that in the context of Grenada? Does that happen at all?
Well, there is supposed to be an organization, but I understand it's not functioning at the moment. I'm not too sure why, what is the reasons. But there should be, there definitely should be. I think surveyors should work together. But one thing I'm grateful for, that I think the surveyors in Grenada because there's so few, they have a good relationship. Sometimes we go to
Okay.
work and we could call Jimmy Brown, we could call Ivalet, we could call somebody and say, hey, we see your name on this plan here. Remember doing some work here? What's the situation? And we get some information right there and we could get things going.
I've also heard anecdotally, this is grapevine talk, of course, but that people, they just hire surveyors, and they get the land surveyed. Sometimes they don't even have ownership or of the land, but that particular document that they get surveyed somehow helps them to get ownership of the land, whether that's through adversary possession, Possessory Titles Act, or through other means. When somebody calls you to do a survey, obviously you're getting paid to do that. You don't necessarily do any background checks on as to whether that person has nefarious intent, do you?
Well, this is something I want to make clear to Grenadians, because every time a
Yes.
Grenadian see a surveyor show up, they get frantic and think somebody's coming to take their land. A land surveyor cannot take your land.
Yes.
We are an instrument of the Constitution to make sure everything is done proper at a measured scale. What a surveyor does is come and measures a portion of land. Even if I measure this portion of land and I generate a plan for it, signed by a licensed surveyor, that does not give anybody entitlement to the portion of land that is surveyed. What happens after this procedure is what matters. So when a surveyor comes to measure X amount of land, it's just to present a document so that you now can go through the necessary steps, which is going to a lawyer, doing the appropriate searches and all these things on them to ensure that this land is not in conflict with anybody else,
Yeah.
not have no other interested parties. And then the lawyer, after doing that search and checking all the necessary information, gets that plan registered. And then you have ownership and entitlement for that land. So the land surveyor is not the one that creates that. So if you see a land surveyor come to do something next to your boundary and you disagree with it, you don't have to try to plan as the surveyor and these kind of things. All you have to do, go to your lawyer or hire another surveyor to come and double check.
I think
Title to your land.
Mhm.
However, after the survey is done, what you were speaking about, I think, is statute of declaration. There's
Yes.
laws in place so that if a land is unused for X and X amount of years, you can show interest, work the land, see what taxes there is to be paid and these kind of things, show interest in it, and then you can claim that land. But to claim that land, that means somebody else is not paying taxes, somebody else is not showing any interest in these kind of things in that land. And even if that procedure is going through, there's searches that the lawyer needs to do. It has to be posted in the newspaper and all these things. So there's enough time for you to actually see what's going on so that somebody can just take your land. If somebody applies for statute of declaration and they get through, it's very difficult for them to get through on somebody's property where there's interest.
Right. So you do have a right to appeal. You have a right to challenge that.
You do have a right to appeal, yes.
As you said, you don't have the right to plan as the surveyor.
At all, at all.
Because I've seen that in my family in St. David's. The surveyor shows up, and it becomes a whole thing.
Man. Enough times we have to take equipment and run, man. Or we have to call the police to escort us.
You've had experiences like that?
Yeah, man. Very often, sometimes we actually have the police to escort us, and sometimes the people who are aggravated overpower the police, so we and the police now have to go.
Wow. All right. for land that we're going to die and leave there, right? Okay.
Exactly.
But let me bring back Renee here. We want to go into again, and Akeem sort of raised it there, but about the association, about the regulation of the industry, regulation of real estate. Obviously, we know that in Grenada we do not have a land use policy, and I suspect that if there is a land use policy, perhaps it would cover regulation in the real estate sector, regulation for surveyors. I do know that there is a Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, but I do not know what laws and what regulations they fall under. But Renee, let us talk about how your sector as realtors, how you self-regulate, if you will.
Okay. So there is a real estate association. It was originally formed in 2005, but it has met sporadically throughout the years with no proper follow-up. But I'm pleased to say that since early 2021, we have come back together. And our main aim coming back together is to get the industry legislated. Okay, when the association was formed, we put code of ethics in place and we put bylaws in place. But of course, if there's no legislation, then there's no way to enforce these code of ethics and these bylaws, right? So we see the legislation and the regulation of the real estate industry as something that's very, very, very important. Not just as beneficial to the real estate agents, but as beneficial to the wider public and everybody that has real estate or will do business in the real estate industry. It's very, very important because without them, essentially people can do what they want and there's no recourse, right? Sorry. Yeah.
What are the drawbacks of not having regulation?
The drawbacks
in your view?
Yeah, the drawbacks of not having regulation, really anybody can operate as a real estate agent. They can call themselves a real estate agent. They can sell property. And if that person who's doing that hasn't gotten the proper knowledge that they need to be able to advise their clients, then you find a lot of mistakes happen, or people get treated unfairly, or people get robbed. Unfortunately, I've had customers come to me and given me the experience that they've encountered, and there's little recourse there, and just basically there's no standard that all real estate agents have to operate under. We have done quite a good job in regularizing the commission rates and so. But again, because each real estate company is privately owned and operated, it's really up to an individual to be knowledgeable to know, okay, well, the real estate agent shouldn't charge me that because that's not the standard rate throughout the industry, for example. And so it impacts people where they may get wrong advice, or real estate agents are selling land without doing the proper homework, and so the wrong piece of land gets sold, for example. So there's a lot of
the wrong pieces of land getting sold. I mean, that is insane. That's crazy to me.
Yes, but the drawbacks are, I would say, mainly the advice that the public gets from real estate agents, and things can take place that just really shouldn't take place, and that affects the person adversely, for years to come because of poor advice given.
Yeah, but what recourse, for example, let's say I get poor advice, or let's say I am overcharged for a parcel of land in Pomerode, St. David's, for example. What recourse can I as a consumer take at that point? Is there a consumer complaints bureau I can go to, or there is no recourse at that point?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All right. And I'm hoping that that's something you will be putting on your radar.
Yes, it is. So we are working towards legislation. We've been, the minute we came back together in 2021, that has been our focus. Our first meeting, we were actually lucky enough to have a meeting with the Attorney General back in October of 2021. So that was our first interaction with the Attorney General's office. And since then, we've had several correspondence, up to the most recent being the 29th of November. We've been put, in communication with the line ministry, because in order for the legislation to happen, one of the ministries have to be involved, obviously. And so we're just putting measures in place. We know it may take a little while, but we really think that it'll benefit us as agents, and of course, all of the public that use our service.
Okay, very well. Sorry for that delay. Akeem, same thing with the surveyors. And then viewers, we will be getting to your questions. There are lots of questions here, lots of conversation that's happening in the comment section. But Akeem, in terms of the Surveyors Association, you do say that there is a sense of camaraderie among your colleagues. But are you constituted into an association?
No.
Okay,
But there
okay.
definitely should be. There definitely should be. I think even as surveyors, we should have a platform where we can even register our own plans, like get our own plans into a database where we can share amongst each other. Because it comes in handy. It makes your job much easier when you have the information right there at the tip of your fingers. Instead of sometimes you reach a job and you have to abandon the job because you have to now go back and get some other information. Where you could just bring it up on your phone or bring it up on your computer or something like that. It makes things a lot easier.
And of course, you've been advocating for the digitization of records. I think that is a major issue when you have people's wills, people's deeds and all of that just taking up mold and dust. It's just
Definitely.
So I'm
Definitely.
glad to know that you're advocating for that. Renee, what else is happening in the sector? What else is going on in the real estate sector that you want John Public to be aware of?
Well, I just to make a note. So
Yeah.
in recent times, the registry actually has begun digitizing the records. All of the records are not digitized yet, but there is a platform you can go online and log in, and it does make some searches easier. But again, it's not complete, right? So just to add on there, so you should take a look at that. But what else is happening in the sector that I haven't already touched on?
I think this was a very informative segment. So let's get to some viewer questions and comments. Quay Perez is saying wrong pieces of land being sold is real. It happened to me. I was sold the wrong piece of land, but I blamed the surveyor. I had no idea until I went there and saw blocks on the land, wondering who was that bold person taking such liberty. My land, I'm guessing that's what the viewer is trying to say, was next to it. Discovered many, many years later. Imagine that. It's rectified now. So to your point, Renee, it apparently, I didn't know that was a thing. Hudson George is saying the former late U.S. Secretary of State George Shultz, George Shultz says prophecy has been fulfilled. Mr. Shultz once said Grenada is a prime piece of land for real estate. Interesting. I believe Mr. Shultz was Secretary of State under Ronald Reagan, although I'm subject to correction. Let's see here. Shireen is saying, why does it seem so many things in Grenada is not yet a work in progress? Interesting. I see you nodding as well there, Renee. Some real estate agents probably ain't even looking out for the best interests of the client. Again, Renee, you indicated that you guys are trying to regularize that to ensure that there are not any bad actors, acting in your name, because, it gives everybody a bad name. Another comment saying they tried that with my house in Mount Rich because they know we are living in the U.S. They put up chain and all kind of thing to, quote, self-acquire the land they wanted. I showed up unannounced with my lawyer and paperwork and reclaimed my property. They looked real dotish taking down the chain. Well, this is interesting. Akeem, this, I guess you hear a lot of those stories too in the field, right, Akeem?
Very often.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to some other comments. Kofi McDonald saying, sadly, some people get upset by the presence of a surveyor because in some areas of Grenada, boundary manipulation is very prevalent. Akeem, boundary manipulation. Can you speak to that?
Well, I personally think that is a temporary and kind of delusional thing because you cannot really shift a boundary. A boundary remains the same. You can shift a piece of iron on the ground, but that is not your boundary. If you're unsure about your boundary and you think somebody has manipulated your boundary, you hire a surveyor. It's very simple.
Okay, very well. What can be done with unfinished building sites and vacant homes that are unkept and falling apart? The town of St. George has that issue. Renee, is that something that's in your bailiwick as realtors, or is that something? Do you have abandoned properties, government, for example, approaching you to take it over because they've been vacant for however long?
No, we don't have
Okay.
that. I mean, we have a lot of people who ask about it. Their abandoned properties who never got finished, or after Hurricane Ivan, the property got damaged and they're unfinished. But I mean, there's nothing we could do. We have to deal with the owner, the true owner of the property.
The true owner of the
unless they
property.
come forward.
Yep.
Yeah.
Including the plan, you cannot own property without a plan. Surveyors have to inform owner in proximity before you can survey. Akeem, that's something that happens?
Well, there's cases where the person don't have an actual plan for the land, but they have a deed. Then you mean you still own the land. The deed is what's important, not necessarily the plan. Sometimes the deed just states the location of the land, the area of the land, what is adjacent to, and the surrounding areas and these kind of things, especially like back in the days. We meet a lot of old plans. I had a situation with a lawyer. We're trying to figure out, they have a bunch of deeds for the client, but we cannot figure out exactly where the land is and these kind of things like that because there's no plans attached to it. That does not mean they don't own the land. But the ownership is a matter of the deed. It's not necessarily the plan. The plan just shows you the area in which you own and these kind of things like that.
Very well.
Grenadian people, I want to advise y'all, like, listen, we are very miseducated about this land thing. I encourage us all to please stop getting so emotional when land is involved and educate ourselves. If we educate ourselves, then we'll better be able to utilize land here in Grenada. I notice people are complaining also about foreigners come and buy X and X land. Can we really afford the land in Lansapine? No. If we cannot afford the land in Lansapine, what we need to consider is, remember, Lansapine, when they bought it, was just bush, bush. And they transformed it into something now that's worth something. So now, if you cannot afford the land in Lansapine now after it's transformed, consider doing what they did. Go in the mountains, buy acres where you could get it so cheap, and transform that into something that can be worth something. Development. This is what we need to teach ourselves. Development. We need to teach ourselves manufacturing. For too long, we pick up nutmeg and cocoa and only want to sell the nutmeg and cocoa. Let's now sell the chocolate. Let's now sell the nutmeg oil. All these things and them. We need to think on a manufacturing level as Grenadians, and that's how we're going to deliver ourselves from poverty and the mindset of poverty.
Just to pick up on what you said there, because that is a concern that people have, that they're being priced out of the market. Your theory of the case, however, is that perhaps we should build wealth?
Well, at the end of the day, in every single industry, you're always going to be priced out. Everything, the value is going to raise as long as the quality is going to be raised. And something like real estate is always increasing in value. We do not want real estate to stop increasing in value. That's bad for us as business people. That takes away our opportunity to invest and develop our things. If we put a cap on real estate, then you as a man, you will have a piece of land for 10 years and it's only going to be that. You cannot take it and build something more. But now we have the opportunity to take something little, give it some time and a little tender loving, and it's going to grow into something bigger. In Lansapine, you might get a portion of land. Let me say you could get 1 acre. You might pay $1 million, right? You can take that same $1 million and go in the hills of Mardi Gras, in the hills of St. Andrews, and get at least 5 acres for that $1 million. So now you have a greater portion of land, and you give it some time. You sell a portion here, you buy, you fix the road. Price go up. You sell a portion here, you run some electrical poles, price go up, and you develop your land, and now you have something more valuable. And I think we need to think on that level and stop trying to do what the so-called colonizers came here and buy us out of. We keep trying to go and live next door to everybody. And it's something I don't get. Why are we fighting up for overpriced land in like a squeezed up areas when there's so much available land that we can use and develop?
But the argument, the counter argument to that might be, well, you need to have access perhaps to your jobs, and of course the hub of economic activity in Grenada happens to be the south of the island. So obviously you would want to find places in the south of the island to live and grow based on your job prospects.
Yes, but we need to consider the perspective as well as it wasn't always that. It started somewhere. I think we're just afraid of the initial stages of life. We don't want to grow the seed. We just want to come and meet a plant and reap the fruit in a year or two. We need to think about growing a seed. That's how it starts. We might not be able to benefit from it. Our children and our grandchildren are going to benefit from it. And that's how the people who are thriving today did it. Well, some of them, they had the hand-downs, yes, but a lot of them planted that seed, and it wasn't until their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren that could reap the fruit.
Intergenerational wealth, transfer of
Definitely.
intergenerational, that is important, but also wealth creation. Brother, I would love to have you back on the program for just a segment on wealth creation, because I think you and I are vibrating on that same spectrum there where that is concerned. Someone is saying, Roger is saying, Akeem is spot on. Another viewer is saying, collectively we should buy lands and develop it. But how united are we to do so? We need to think outside and beyond the box. Very interesting perspective.
Financial literacy and all these things, and them camaraderie. We need to learn all these things first before all these things could go on. Because one man can go and develop a whole 20 acres by himself. He needs a team, and to first have a team, we need to learn how to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Renee, Akeem has been preaching this morning on a Sunday morning.
Yes, no, I'm actually, in agreement with Akeem. So many people may not know, but for instance, Lansepine, the entire peninsula used to be owned by a Grenadian. He didn't inherit it; he bought it, and he then divided it up. Same goes for Egmont. The entire peninsula was owned by a group of Grenadians, right? So they came collectively and they purchased the acres and acres, and then they developed it. And so just as Akeem was saying, I understand the issues that we have here in terms of how prices, not just of property, but everything else is just appreciating. And one may argue it's appreciating so fast or too fast, then maybe we can handle our, due to our cost of living and our salaries and whatnot. But I think people do need to, just as Akeem said, to really, put their heads together and see where they can plant the seed. Because as the data shows, year after year, there is significant demand by Grenadians to purchase land, right? And as it's not just going to be the same pieces of land that just change ownership. So we need to look at areas out there. There are a lot of people who have family estates. Akeem mentioned his family estates. So there are people out there who have family estates. Are you just going to let it sit there, or are you able to maybe pull the family together and see how you can make that land work for you, turn it into an investment, put the infrastructure in, cut it up, and sell that land to Grenadians? Because year after year, there is demand for land.
Absolutely. And we definitely running out the clock on this segment, but I want to offer an opportunity for some closing comments from both of you. And of course, Cassandra is saying, without a land use policy, we will continue to have these discussions. Although we had an earlier commenter who indicated that there is, in fact, a land use policy. The question I have for that viewer is the land use policy in force? Is it legislatively prescripted? Because if it was legislatively prescripted, actually it's Tessa Barry who made that comment, Dr. Tessa Barry, who made that comment earlier. If it was legislatively prescripted, perhaps we would not have that type of vai approach to building things anywhere and everywhere in Grenada. So I want to give you all the opportunities for some closing comments. Renee, I want to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I loved being a part of this show. Thank you again for having me. I just want to take this opportunity to, say to anybody listening who has any interest in real estate at all, from any point of view, anything relating to real estate, whether it be you have land, whether it be you want to rent, buy, sell, whatever, seek the advice from the professionals, right? Because that can really make or break your investment. You want to get advice on the proper values before you purchase. You want to get advice on resale values before you build your home. You want to get advice on, okay, before you just build something to rent, get advice on what amenities do I need to put into this building in order to get the best rental rate out of it. Just really get advice from the professionals, and it's free. You can call me up and you have certain questions, and I am happy to impart my knowledge on you. And there are many other real estate professionals out there who are open to taking calls, open to taking emails. But really, before you delve into the market and make your first investment or do improvements on your property or buy, get that advice. I think that can really make or break, your decision.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. All right. Akeem, over to you, brother.
All right. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share some concerns and
yes, sir,
aid in how best I could to find solutions. Yeah. What I want to say to everybody is I want to remind everybody that Grenada is a very young nation. We have a far way to go in terms of development and infrastructure. So we have two options. We can sit down and blame the government for not getting things up to par that it needs to be, or we can try our best to educate ourselves and better develop ourselves to thrive in this Vicky situation that we are in. Let us stop the complaining. Let's educate ourselves. Get the professionals on board, learn the procedures, and learn how to cope within this society that we live in right now. Yeah. And lastly, don't forget to contact Abraham Services for all your surveying needs. Blessed.
And Terra Caribbean for all your real estate needs.
Yes, definitely. Caribbean for all of your real estate needs.
Shameless plug, but necessary, right? But we just a programming note. We did invite the Grenada land actors because they were the ones who initially raised that concern with us. We were surprised that they neglected to send someone, that they decided to pass on this opportunity. But certainly, we always try to bring balance to the Bubb Report, and hearing from the Grenada land actors their concerns around the equitability of home and land of ownership in Grenada is something that needs to also be discussed. So, land actors, we're hoping to have a part 2 to this program early next year. So, we're hoping that you can be part of that conversation then. So, viewers and listeners, let me also thank, on behalf of the viewers and listeners, I want to thank Renee and Akeem for being on the program today. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Absolutely. Our viewers and listeners, stand by. We'll be right back. The next segment of the Bubb Report comes to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. They are a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City. They can be reached on 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. Because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Revenge porn is what we call non-consensual pornography. It is the distribution of sexually graphic or intimate images of individuals to others. And it can happen when those images were given by consent. So if you take an intimate picture of yourself for your current boyfriend, girlfriend, or partner and text it, or if an image is taken without their consent, so without someone knowing. And both of those images can turn into revenge porn when, say, a jilted lover distributes those images after the end of the relationship in order to embarrass you or harass you. Revenge porn is a problem overwhelmingly for women because it not only embarrasses you, but it subjects you to hate, harassment, and stalking. Many people can lose their jobs and face educational as well as professional negative consequences. But more so than that, it leads to depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide. We have incidents of individuals who are victims of revenge porn, who used to be famous bloggers, who used to be involved in public life, who, as a result of the hate and harassment that resulted, and embarrassment that resulted from being victims of non-consensual pornography, no longer participate in society online. This highlights one of the problems with privacy law today. In many cases, the images used in a non-consensual pornography situation are given over to the individual with consent. It's a picture that you take of yourself that you give to your boyfriend or girlfriend as kind of as an exciting image or as an object of sexual attraction. Because you consented, because you gave that image to your partner, current privacy tort law does not consider further distribution of that image a violation of your privacy because you gave it over to someone. We can craft a reasonable statute that may include all types of penalties, but this behavior is no different when it comes down to the effects that it has on the individual and the effects that it has on society. It is no different than harassment, stalking, and it has all of the same negative effects that those admittedly criminal behaviors do have. And jail time may be associated with stalking and harassing victims.
And welcome back, viewers and listeners, to the program. Now, last week, there was a case of the release of an unsolicited release, of course, of an intimate encounter between two males on the sister island of Carriacou. We cannot confirm whether or not they were actually on the island when it occurred, but that certainly unleashed a firestorm in the Grenadian community with respect to consensual same-sex encounters. The incident involved a famous artist, a Soca artist on the island of Carriacou, who in fact won the Calypso and Soca Monarch on that island, representing the island in national competitions in Grenada. Now, here to unpack this issue in the context of LGBTQ issues and in the context of breaches of privacy, in the context of a society that is still socially conservative, Bobby Steele and my other guest just went off the screen here. That is Kenita Placide of ECADE, which is based in St. Lucia. Gentlemen and lady, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Bobby. Good morning and welcome to the program again. Now last week, in the wake of the release of that particular video, you issued a call for compassion, and you really, I believe in your social media posting, you reflected a view that many LGBTQ people in Grenada have, though still a very small minority, the fact that the mental health damage that can cause on their lives being exposed in such a way in a socially conservative society as Grenada. So I want to get your thoughts as to why you felt it was important to speak out on that issue.
Well, Kala, let me begin by saying that issue of suicide and those kind of thoughts that could come into head from damages like that doesn't apply to the LGBT community alone. I mean, you have had this happen to straight people, right? And they have dealt with that as well. They have to go through the exact same emotions in terms of the personal emotions to them. Yes, you have the society still, scorning to a certain extent because of the conservative views, if you want to put it that way, of the people who belong to, that sector of society, right? I don't belong to that sector myself, right? But I can tell you that, for instance, when I look at that individual exposure, but I can tell you that I have dealt with that individual for a number of years. right? Because of the entertainment industry I belong to. And you are talking about one of our most successful, because I see Carriacou, Grenada, Petit Martinique all as one. So if somebody wins a title in Petit Martinique, they still want a title for Grenada as far as I'm concerned, right? Same applies to Carriacou. Now that individual has won more titles, right? Represent us in terms of competition-wise, right? Has represented so well for us as Grenadians. And we are here slandering this guy. I will continue to push forward this and to treat it from a, you know, I don't know how to put it, boy. We're not showing any compassion to what he has done and what the damage we are doing to our industry and our people on the whole when we take this approach, you know?
Do you think that that is a career-ending type of situation? Because there was a release a couple of years ago involving a very talented and prolific young man from St. Patrick, who is a very talented singer, right? There was also a video released with him. Again, I believe it was also a case of revenge pornography there. And he has difficulties with finding work in Grenada. He has difficulties with participating in a lot of the karaoke competitions that happens. As a matter of fact, he does not even live in his community again. He's in a halfway house somewhere in Grenada. I'm not going to say it, of course. But that impact, do you think that would have an impact on that artist moving forward, given the attitude of the society? Bobby?
Well, I would say it depends on a number of things. One, as I say, and my post alluded to, this individual, he has a very strong will inside of him to achieve great things. He had a very rough life, very, 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 very rough life, and yet he still achieved many good things in terms of, you know, awards, I should say. Awards in Grenada sadly do not come monetized the way they should come, right? But I believe that, you know, it depends on how we approach this. You know, it's sad, but you speak to a reality that it could end up really damaging him, that his career is
a commenter is saying here, why should it end his career? Well, I mean, that is a naive perspective, because I've seen the reaction from soca artists in Grenada. One particular soca artist from St. Patrick, you know, pretty much was burning him out. Other soca artists are doing that. So the question is this going to be a case where they would not want to be associated with, as they call it in Grenada, quote unquote, fish, quote unquote, battyman, quote unquote, whatever other terms that they use? Bobby, that I was just, did you hear that question?
No, the internet was giving, internet was giving me some trouble. Can you repeat?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, how can you say that would not necessarily end his career? And I was just responding to one of the viewers here. Given the reaction of the soca and entertainment community, at least some segments of that community, who would want to then be associated with him given that context? That was the question I was asking.
Well, you and me talked about this, you know, previously. And, you know, I've stated my case on this, right? That we as a society are really, really and truly a very hypocritical society, yeah? And let me put this to you this way. There are people who belong to that sector of our society.
I think Bobby's internet is struggling this morning. So Bobby,
mass bands, people who are playwrights, people who are involved in the entertainment industry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm basically saying it also amazes me how some who belong to that sector of society can be praised and uplifted in Grenada for belonging to that sector. We don't have a problem with them, right? Which is what it should be. We should have a problem with anybody based on their sexuality, period, no matter what sexuality there is, right? But then others, for some reason or the other, can be destroyed for having belonged to it. No, is the issue because of tape? Is it because the one might not have had a tape released on them? I would like to think that we're supposed to be more, we're supposed to be more developed as human beings than that, right? And when you and me were talking, I was telling you how, sometimes I look back at my past when I started off as a teenager and stuff like I'm talking about now. And I am ashamed that some of the ways I used to think about sexuality and human, things. I was a very homophobic person. I can tell you that for off the top. And sometimes I look back in the way I think about those things now, right? And see, it's about maturing. It's about, we've gone past that. We've gone past, at least I would like to hope that as a nation that we can't be seen as a developed society in minds if our minds are not developed, right? I'm not saying that you have to live a lifestyle that somebody else lives, right? If that's their lifestyle, that's their lifestyle. The only time it should be a problem is if they're trying to enforce their lifestyle upon you. And that is where, there should be an issue. Like, for example, when you look at what's happening in the schools in the States, right? Where things like that, that's a whole nother show. But I'm just giving an example of what they're trying to do in the schools in the States, which I am totally against. To me, children should be allowed to be children, right? And the parents and the children, they're the ones to educate their children and those kind of things as far as I'm concerned, right?
Okay. Let us bring in, let's take opinion. I'm going to bring in Kanita. Kanita, I do not want to butcher your last name. Placide?
Placide, that's fine.
Placide, because you are St. Lucian, so maybe there's a French francophone / Creole. But you represent the Eastern Caribbean Alliance for Diversity and Equality. Now, yes. in your experience, have you also been seeing instances of revenge pornography involving people in the LGBTQ community in the Caribbean that sort of really cause them to be in danger in many respects?
I mean, it's alarming. I think first of all we have to look at there's a triple factor. Mm-hmm. We have a colonial history that people, although they say they reject, they still embrace. We have the fact that the burglary law in many of our islands are still on the books. And this burglary law actually indicates anal sex with a male on male, and in one or two countries, male on female. It's illegal. Then we have a religious sector that says our country is religious, and basically homosexuality is an abomination, as written in the Bible. So what you have is those three factors then actually look at the social and cultural lives of our people. So we have been brought up in a certain mindset that this is where we are. Even if we have evolved, that does not mean we have evolved so much. The one thing we have noticed that many of the churches actually agree on is that they need to speak about homosexuality. When there's constitution reform, when there's conversations.
But isn't that the constitution? Isn't that the constitutional right to speak on an issue that they fundamentally disagree with?
And I totally agree, and this is why my point was coming around to this.
Okay, go ahead.
If the churches gave as much energy to reducing violence against any people, or speak up about other ills in society, we probably could have a common plate to say that this is across the board. But more often than not, when our children and our women are violated, they are silent. But once it's an LGBT issue, they would quickly shout out. And this is the fundamental difference. We have seen it across each country. So what you have seen is revenge porn coming out. And there's always a question whether it is the other party involved in this that actually put it out. Some people have indicated that their devices, or we have seen, where devices went bad, brought to technicians and it was released. We have had situations where people were arrested by police and police released videos. We have seen cases in St. Lucia, in Antigua, in Grenada, St. Vincent, videos being released exposing individuals intentionally because they understand where the public is and what's the kind of morale that would be challenged. They understand the impact of those videos. What they do not necessarily put into play here is what is the mental standings of the individuals that they are actually putting in that kind of chaos. People are coming from places where even if their sexuality may be different, it's already challenged. Because for an individual who is gay, whilst going through their process, they have already had to challenge themselves. Why am I different? Why do I feel this? This is not how society says I should be, because you actually do try to do normal. Then put into this where you are, okay, how can I be me? How can I be genuine me? And especially you understand it, Doctor, if you really look at it, you'd see that for the last how many centuries, the rite of passage was actually through church. Every single person could say their parents brought them to church, they were baptized or they were confirmed. And so that religious indoctrination actually is there. So you have a double barrel between what the Bible say I should be and what society say I should be and what I'm feeling that is way different from where they say I should be. So people actually go through that challenge mentally, even if society don't think so. But when they get to the point of self-acceptance, that is where things, and some people never actually get to self-acceptance because they know how society is. You want a job, you want an opportunity, you want to be able to live in a society without the stigma, without the discrimination, and even without the violence. What some people do not know is when those videos come out, some of these gay guys are beaten, they are stoned. Some of them are put out of the apartments they are renting. They are put out by family, they are shunned by family. So they become an isolation. They become so isolated that their mental health further deteriorates. Some think asylum, but luckily some others at least try to get out. Not everybody has the same opportunities.
And I'm gonna. I see Bobby nodding here because in Bobby's Facebook posting, you mentioned the fact, Bobby, of that mental health impact, not only on the individual, but on the people around him who might be empathetic. Some obviously might not be, but you speak about that, Bobby, and you said you were very concerned about his welfare, right? And so going to what Kenny said, so I want you to unpack that concern that you had, Bobby, around that mental health impact there.
Well, you see, that's the thing, because, we individualizing to talk about him in particular, because I can speak to my knowledge of him, right? And I think this could have a very, very, very negative impact on somebody who really already is not in a strong, there are some people who are strong enough, and I'm not saying he's not strong enough, because he's survived quite a bit already and struggled through quite a bit already. But I think this is going to have a very big impact on him. And I will appeal to all the people who are closest around him, right, to be aware of that, because, as the doctor said, we don't know the damage of each individual struggle mentally inside. And somebody who has many times the people who are on the verge of, making very bad decisions in their life. Sometimes the outward energy that you see is a smile on a face, or they look like if they don't have a problem in the world. But at that moment inside, they have reached their lowest point, and that's why that's bad, because they don't care anymore. They have no care anymore. They've given up, and it's time to go as far as they concern their mind, because it stops the pain, right, in their mind. Right, and this is why I'm saying it's so important. And my piece was just basically to say, and I hope it gets to the friends, not so much to him, but it gets to the friends around him, to say to them, you know, this is a time, if you're going to be a real friend, to be a friend, to really be a friend, right? Because he is at his most vulnerable right now. And in order to put that in context, is my message was also to say, if you're going to judge somebody, then judge them on their whole worth, not piece of what they have done. One mistake doesn't define them.
But sometimes that one mistake can be a life-defining moment as well. Some mistakes can be a life-defining moment too.
But,
it can be. But
Doc, you know this for yourself.
Go ahead, Bobby, and then Kenita. Go ahead, Bobby. Finish your thought, and I'll get to Kenita.
Right. No, but I was just giving an example of this, right? I mean, and we've all seen this. They have people who have made mistakes in life. They've gone to jail for these mistakes. And they have come out to be some of the best people we have in our society in terms of what their education, the things they have chosen, their path of their life, how they change their life around, and the impact it has had on people, right? So I would never say anybody should be judged on one mistake. Yes, you have to live up to that mistake, right? And if it is a thing where there are penalties involved, you have to pay penalties, right? You have to deal with the penalties that are involved. But this is not somebody's sexuality in today's society. That's
when not a mistake.
Every single TV station,
that is consensual,
every single program we watch on TV, there's not a single program. A show that I grew up, and I'm sure you grew up watching, Sesame Street, right? Sesame Street. Let's talk about that. All of us as little kids remember Sesame Street. Well, look at what we found out about Sesame Street now. You know what I mean? Right? So what I'm trying to say, we really need to get past judging people on their sexuality. To me, that is, I mean, wow. I still can't believe that as a conversation that people still engage in. You know what I mean?
Because the impacts, I believe, the impact is what is still the issue here, right, Kenita? The impacts of that, right? The reaction. We saw the firestorm coming out of Grenada. Before that, there was also the young man, I believe his name is Cameron, from St. Patrick. Very talented karaoke singer, very talented singer. He was an athlete at the McDonald's College before that. Now he's pretty much persona non grata in Grenadian society because of consensual adult grown people's business, and it became a black mark on his entire life. So Kenita, I want you to pick up on what Bobby said there.
I think one of the things that we find is, and Bobby, you're so correct on that, when we look at support systems, the people we call friends, because all of a sudden association becomes a thing because people might think, or people will associate me, and those people distance. The one thing I could tell you, Kellon just spoke about Kimon. The isolation is real. You know, where family have basically disowned you, where they pass you straight like you're a stranger, where you basically have no one. Now, the organization Grenchap has been doing quite a bit in terms of the advocacy on the ground. But again, when we look at the people we thought who were friends that are no longer there, it's a thing. We understand that there is a law constitutionally. We understand that the religion is there, but that's not even the issue. How do we as individuals treat somebody else? And what does it matter to you, the individual, what sex this person is having if they're not having sex with you and if they are not hurting anybody? Because here we are talking about consensual adults. And this is the factor. But the other thing that people in Grenada should also be aware of, and those who are releasing those videos, whether deliberately or in error, they also have to be aware that even if they view sex between two men as illegal, there is an electronic crimes bill that also indicates you sharing such pornography is also illegal. And so we also have to understand where that breach of law is. Now, many people will not focus on the latter, because I could tell you when that video with from St. Patrick was released, people thought they would have gotten arrested, because here's the proof that they are committing an illegal act. Even this was an old video. The point is, the person who released that video, who circulated it, has committed an offense, and one that is actually with high sentence at this point. So people have to understand the laws as well that guard this country. And this is why with every country, and I mean, ICAID works across the region. We work very closely with Grenjap in Grenada, who was the first to bring this to our attention and say, hey, we need to look at support systems for those people. How can we assist them with this that is going? And this is the first thing we put into action. Are they safe? Because we immediately know the young man in St. Patrick's got busted up and left on the side of the road. And so immediately violence do come to those people. It's not just a mental health thing. They are physically attacked by some people. So even if you think at the end of the day, in your opinion, that homosexuality is illegal, it is a sin, and what have you, your actions can also be an illegal one in terms of harm to somebody else. Because their sexuality do not harm you. But when that violence is inflicted, it is a harm that is done in a different way. So we are living in a very hypocritical society. And unfortunately, it is easy to point fingers at those that are known to be queer or those who are known to be gay, because majority of other people are probably very down low. And it fosters a society where people have to hide to be themselves instead of opening to be themselves. So there's that continuous perpetuation of dishonesty because we are not moving past that. So when we look at what is happening, how can we support as an individual? We tend to always put out, once it's not us, it's okay to share. This is what we do, because when it's us, we look for ways to hide it. But once it's not us, it's okay to share. So this went viral. And this video is now across countries. Well, it's across the world for all you know, because God knows what groups it got shared on. And they have zero care as to how this has affected the lives of the individuals involved. And unfortunately, Kellon, when we look at this video, the more popular you are, it's the more impact and damage it's going to do.
But you know, Bobby said something there which speaks to the question of hypocrisy. He says that that there is a differentiation in how we treat certain people that identify openly or not openly as LGBTQ people versus how we treat others. Is that a pattern that we see also in other OECS Eastern Caribbean countries, Kenita?
Of course. Class, race plays major parts in how people deal with you. Because if you are a qualified lawyer, doctor, technician, or those that are seen to have, if you come from a family of a certain name, if you're white passing or even of a lighter skin color, usually there's also so there are different levels of which people will. There's also a difference in how someone who might be openly expressive compared to someone who might be trying to just keep their business to themselves. There are a number of things that are at play. There's also a difference between whether they accept a lesbian or they accept a gay man. Because in our society, they tend to be more passing on lesbians, but on gay men, the extreme of violence is twice. Although we do have some lesbians that are raped, when you look at the violence against gay men, and if we look across the region, we would have seen, and I mean, it's not just taking Grenada into consideration. We have had killings in we have had killings in Jamaica, you have had killings in Trinidad, St. Lucia, even St. Lucia have had 5 to 6 murders that have not been solved of known gay men. We have seen the beatings, even of individuals, and as the organizations do the documentation, you'd have seen if you are too much of a feminine guy, gay or not gay, by perceived action, someone might dismiss you from your job or give you trouble to get a job. And so with this kind of video coming out, I mean, I am one that says if he stays home and he continues to participate in Calypso or what have you, he has to have a back of steel to be able to go in, because we know in the next Calypso round, more than likely there are about 2 or 3 songs that's going to come out on him alone, or this kind of situation. And so he really has to have the backbone to be able to stay, or he has to have the courage to be able to leave and start life all over.
Bobby, let us unpack that again. Can you say saying that he has to have that backbone of steel there to be able to deal with that long-lasting backlash?
You see, I look at this another way.
Yeah.
Okay. If this is your only form, income, job, the only thing that is you, then how do you start over? Where do you go? You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes he has to take, that is why I speak to about friends and support base, because he might be stuck that this is the only avenue he can stay in. So the only way for him to stay and get past this, because eventually the talk will stop. Eventually it will stop. It's a damage he has to take along the way till it gets to that point. But I want to raise something else to put some thought on from here. I wanted to get an opinion on that too, Keller, right? In this modern age that we're in, because I'm not really from that age, I'm a dinosaur when it comes to this social media stuff, right? But everything seems to be done for that like. Everything seems to be, how can I get a like, a tick, somebody that want to be following me? Everybody is doing that, right? You look at a TikTok, I think probably within the next couple of months, you probably will see just people naked on the things, because the one they're wearing now and getting down to on it is practically zero, right? But I'm not saying that people should be judged on it or not, but what I was bringing up this point was to say, I noticed a trend that started a couple of years ago, and I don't know if you all noticed that as well. It started out, to me, in Trinidad, and it could have been in other islands, but to me, because I follow Trinidad a lot, I saw it a lot out of Trinidad first, and that was these school fights, with the school children fighting, right? And then it almost became things where you're seeing this all over social media, where people are going, and it's like they're getting ready to take pictures and they instigate the fights. They instigate the fight so they can get the video. You can see how they can hear the children going, well, fighting her, shit on her, beating her, this kind of way. And then the video comes from there. Yeah. And this is the scare I have with videos like this coming out, because some of that negative energy that could come from that can also come from this. And I was asking the question to get to you to say, how are the laws in relation to, for example, you release a video and you put it out there and that person gets beaten up, or he kills himself. Can that charge reflect that you're the reason for that happened to him? Is it how are our courts dealing with those matters? Because I know that there are laws in place right? But how do they deal with those problems? Like, let's hypothetically speaking, if somebody from that community had a video released by somebody outside in society and they were badly beaten up because of it, does the court system allow for the individual who actually released that video to be part and parcel of the crime? You know, like if you, for instance, you're in a car and you go with some people and you happen to be in a car in America and the car goes and commits a robbery, you are charged with the robbery as an accessory to the robbery along with everybody else. I'm saying maybe the lobbying should be taking place, if not already in place, to make sure that the individual who released the video that can in turn bring about harm, if this person kills himself because of that, there can be linkage. That and there was a girl I remember in the States. She basically was charged, I believe, and she was convicted, right? Because she had broken up with her boyfriend, and she was basically telling him on the phone that he should kill himself and go ahead and kill himself and this, and she kept pushing him on that. And he kept saying, you know, things, why are you saying this? And apparently the conversation was recorded, right? It was voice clips, I think she was sending. And she was charged, and if I'm not mistaken, she was found guilty of some charges in relation to his death.
Yeah. I do believe, and Kanita can bear with me here, that there is an Electronic Crimes Act in place that ought to treat with those matters. The question is, to what extent are provisions of the Electronic Crime Act strictly enforced? Kanita, I'm not too sure if you want to take Bobby's consideration, the question there.
For sure.
Go ahead.
No, for sure. Advocacy has been done on this, and it is continuous. I think what is missing is understanding just how up to date is the Grenada police. I mean, I would take it back to St. Lucia, where I could say that we have had, say for example, St. Lucia Forensics Lab recertified. We have gone through the cameras now, even cameras in public places that have facial recognition and all those kind of things being updated. Now, for when you look at electronic crimes, that's also with the police having the proper software that when they receive this video, they will actually be able to track it back to the end person who actually shared it in the first place. If they can do the IPs along with the help of the communications company, it then means that they can link it to this person. And by that investigation, then be able to actually have that person charged, one, under the cyber law. But if there is actually, like you were saying, implications of that action which cause harm, they have other parts of the Constitution that they can actually add additional charges once the investigation have taken full force. So I do think that there are certain ways of getting that done. One is identifying if people already know, or if you already know who may have shared it. I mean, technically, if we look at any of those videos, we can take the second person or maybe the third person in that room who shot the video. That's where the investigation would start, right? And then pull that into how it got into the public sphere. And technically, the police should be able to lead off from there, tracing the IPs and doing that. But I certainly do think that in terms of the law, and I think this is why people have to educate themselves about the law and understanding exactly what constitutes the law. But as we move as a people, I think Steele, you said it, Kellon, you said it, in this age, 2020, and I do note that in the chat, people are saying homosexuality is illegal. And understanding what is illegal. Homosexuality in none of our countries are illegal. The anal penetration is what's illegal within the Constitution. And people do not know how to differentiate that. So even the contents of the video that was shared of this young man, technically it is not illegal. There was no anal penetration. But you see, in their head, once it's two men in the act, everything goes wrong. And people have to come from that place. People really have to come from that place. But again, I would, like Still did, really employ the friends who call themselves friends, the family who actually still sees this individual as their family. Please don't turn your back. Create that support system that allows that support to continue to flow. Continue to give that love. Continue to just be family to this individual, be friends to this individual. And I think it's one of the things that we can ask for.
What if family cuts him off and says, like with Kemen, we want nothing to do with you? That's also a reality.
Well, the one thing that I've learned in my world of activism, Kelon, is that there are two types of family for me. Mm-hmm. There's the blood relatives that forms this biological bond, but you also have chosen family. And the chosen family is those other persons that accept you as you, who is there for you as you. Sometimes we call them friends, but some of our friends become even more than friends. They are like blood family to us. And I think this is looking at it. You can have biological family, you can have chosen family. And in this case, maybe chosen family might be there more. But either way, that support system is necessary. I could tell you as ECADE, through GrenChap, which is the LGBT organization in Grenada, we'll be working with them to see what we can do on our end. But on the other end, it's a matter of ensuring, in all of this, for us, is ensuring the individual is safe.
Mm-hmm. Now, we have an interesting comment here from a viewer. The viewer is saying the issue isn't necessarily about the sexual orientation of said artist, but more so that the said artist is known to publicly burn out, quote, fish and Batman. So his hypocrisy was a catalyst for the backlash. Bobby, let's get your thoughts on that idea.
Well, I wouldn't doubt, because I can't say I follow his career enough to say that sometimes people make up that as a way to in other words, to justify what they're doing. They make up a whole history. They make up things that were never said by the individual in order to continue and spread that, because they want to have more reason to be able to justify their acts. No, if he has done that, it's unfortunate, because it will make this period of suffering that he will be going through a lot harder on him, right? Because they're gonna keep it going longer because of that, right? But I cannot say in my years of dealing with him that I have come across that. And I would say to you, sometimes, and I think, Doc, you were alluding to this before, right? Sometimes the individual does his best or her best to fit into what is in normal society in order, and meaning they think this is the only way they could protect themselves. Mm-hmm. Right? And then there are others, and I could give an example of a guy, right? And this guy he's gay, openly gay, and when he'll come to our establishment, what he will do, he knows people know he's gay. He will go to the DJs and get them to play songs, request songs, right? That are like the earlier days of Bourgeois and Solar, when, burning fire on the Batiwan and this, as they call him, right? And he would have a laugh with it. And basically what his approach was, that anything you guys could tell me is not going to affect me. So you could waste time thinking about those things to tell me, but it's not going to affect me because I'm past that. I could live and enjoy things, and I'm not going to fret over it. And funny enough, this particular individual I speak to is a Jamaican. And from my understanding, the Jamaicans treat the gay guys harder in their society, even though it's treated everywhere hard. I understand that Jamaica is the hardest, right? And so he's all probably have come from a background of really bad treatment in Jamaica. He's here, great worker, very established in what he's doing, very productive in terms of what he's doing for himself, right? And I guess he just sees Grenada is a place as of just getting out of, the bad environment. Maybe what's going to happen to somebody like Killer B, maybe the support base has to try to find a way to remove him from in the direct link for a while and see if that works. I don't know. I really don't know. I can't speak to that individual because I'm not close to him now. But what I want people to know is the interactions I had with this guy in particular, right? Like I get that story on the message I put out there on him, and I will tell you how many characters, how many people in Grenada, Keller, would have done what he did there. How many? And that speaks to me that inside, even though he's been through a hard life, right? And I want to repeat it, Keller, if you mind, because I want to tell this story because I think it's so important, right?
Yes, please.
This is a guy that when I met him, I went up to Carriacou Carnival. I brought up my group to Carriacou Carnival. I met him through that experience. That year, he won, I think, both Soca Monarch and Road March, right? And he was coming down they were sending him down for the national show, right? And I just gave him a number and said, stay in touch with this. And when the national show was happening, he didn't have money to get on the Osprey. He did not have a ticket. The people in Carriacou did not buy him a ticket to come to represent Carriacou in Grenada at the national show. So he was going on the cargo boat, right, to come down, right? He saved up enough money to get on the cargo boat to come down. He didn't know where he was going to stay, nothing, right? So I got involved, me and my wife, we got involved and we helped him out, right? And, he came down for his presentation. I gave him some money to take part in that presentation. At the time, I didn't have a lot of money or thing, but I gave him, he got a couple thousand, right? If I remember correctly, on the amount. And he went and he took part in the show. He placed higher than he had ever placed before. A couple of weeks after the show, my staff at bar was running at the time, said, Mr. Steele, somebody passed by and dropped off this envelope for you. Right? And they didn't know who the guy was. They had no idea. They could just told me the short guy, but they don't know who he is. When I opened that envelope, the exact money that I had given him was back in that envelope. I had never asked him to give me back the money. I had never said to him that he owed me money. But what kind of character, how many people that you would have met in society would do something like that? You understand? And it speaks, and let me tell you, it's funny how the world works, because I remember opening that envelope. I remember the feeling that morning, boy, or some bill or something, and I really didn't have the money. And I opened that envelope and I saw that money. It felt like, I don't believe in a church per se, but I do believe in a creator. And it felt like if the creator made these things happen. And I'm saying, in society, these little things, if we just help each other, if we stop trying to bring down each other, and everybody just, let's really make an effort to help each other and raise each other, right? I think we won't have the kind of problems we're seeing right now, because I think a lot of that comes from trying to burn people and bring people down and try to think, comes up a little bit of envy and a little bit of the negative things that are happening in our own life. And we want other people to feel our pain, so this is how we project out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a little thing, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Kenita, you are there nodding and saying, yes, Bobby, go ahead.
No. It speaks to character. It just speaks to character. But we have to admit, our society has not necessarily allowed an enabling environment for everybody to just be themselves. And you know for sure, I have seen it many times, that you can be the best of what you are in some realms. As soon as they get to know about your sexuality, all of a sudden it's all about your sexuality instead of your skills.
Yeah.
And for the person who said that, we also do know in a toxic kind of way, some of our guys sometimes do project what society expects them to project, which is the same narrative. And so if he have used the fish and batty boy burn down kind of, you have to understand what is the circumstances of this. It doesn't mean that it's right, but there is an expectation and there is a pressure when you become a public, you have that kind of public image. But either way, as an
Speaking to that,
individual,
speaking to that pressure to confirm, Dr. Tessa Barry is also making a very important point here. I think there is a need for a support system for the ladies involved in relationships where the men are involved with both men and women and the women have no idea. They're having children only to find out in a public manner about their spouse's sexuality. This
yes.
too, I think, should be discussed. And do you think that that is an extension of that pressure to confirm to those norms of the society as well?
I certainly, and this is why I said to the very start, our society, our communities do not necessarily provide you with an enabling environment. When we think about how individuals think about being themselves, and this is why the first part of this conversation, I started speaking about the individuals coming out with themselves and their process, thinking about where society think they should be, where church think they should be, and where they are in the process of this. I think when you look at the process of that, it comes to a place. Some people actually do find that self identity and able to say, okay, you know what, this is where I am. So one thing people should understand is conversations that usually don't happen. It's whether, this person may not be gay. This person could be a bisexual, which means that he has an attraction for both men and women. There are also individuals that actually we have seen this too. Some of the women actually do know this guy may be gay, but at the end of the day, they think that being with them will change them, and sometimes even having a child will keep them. And so we have to look at the reality of situations, and it's not a blanket situation because we do have to take situations for what they are. You cannot say it's blanket because you cannot say it attributes to every single thing that happens. But one, for a guy to say that he's gay in society means that this guy has really grown what we say a backbone. He can be himself. He stands in his truth, whether family accept him or not. Some of them go through a hell of a time to make it. When they do make it, they are good. We have a thing that says it gets better, because for those young people who find that their sexuality may be different between that 15 to 18 age group where they are under the parents' housing and control, it's a very trying time trying to navigate, especially when you have parents that say, if I know you're gay, I'll kill you myself. And some of them know literally the parents will do it. It's something that is hidden. So from time you're a young person, you know homosexuality is not accepted. Therefore, from a young person, you actually learn how to defer that. Yes, some persons actually get involved with men and women to defer the fact that their actual preference might be the other. Because again, it is called survival. You do not want the beating, you do not want the killing, you do not want the constant nagging. And it's part of the mental health aspect. So in society, you actually have persons who have learned to divert that attention because there is not a space to necessarily say, this is who I am, this is where I am, here I am. And unfortunately, it's the reality. But you know, something, Kellon, that we also have to deal with is the fact that this gay porn or revenge porn is not just to the gay guys. We have seen a number of women across the Caribbean placed in this position. There was a year, almost every other week, we had women being exposed by men for different reasons, and their lives also was put in that kind of turmoil. People are still doing sex videos with people they think they trust until that relationship come to an end. If the other party decide it's not ending for me or I'm going to destroy you, then it's released. So we still have to deal with it as a nation, not just as gay people, as a nation across, because women usually get destroyed just as badly as this is destroying this young person in this situation. So I think when we look at it, and I look at equality, gender, I look at gay issues, I work across the board and I work with the intersection. So I have seen those impact. We have also seen this, and I think Still brought it up earlier. It was not just the fighting videos from schools that was in high circulation. There was also porn from schools, in classrooms and outside, all of a sudden in circulation. When a video comes to you, you have no idea which island or which school it's from. So right now, across the OECS, I should say across the Caribbean, when a video comes out, it flies in quick seconds, because people are sharing it with different, and we have to understand the interconnectivity of the islands. So it's not a thing where your life get destroyed in Grenada and I can bring you over to St. Lucia to start over. Somebody in St. Lucia saw it too. So when we are thinking about what those videos are doing to people, I mean, as much as we could tell people stop doing videos, it's their right to do videos, but how are they protecting themselves in the balance of things?
Absolutely. And we'll get to one comment, and then, folks, we will take one final break, and then we will end the program for today. I invite you back for some closing comments. Donna Swap is saying, our compassion is selective in Grenada. Hate is not hate. Hate is only hate when directed at what we agree we hate. We need to get to a place where we see things for what they are. Every human being deserves full respect and the opportunity to live as a full citizen in the place they call home, period. So I just thought I would include that. Bobby?
Yeah, I was speaking to that with you earlier because, you know, we have people select, because there are people in our society that, for instance, I mean, I don't want to allude to any, but I have seen in society here where people will run down on gay people. But if a certain gay person did an event, everybody going to the event, right? Everybody going to that event. If a certain gay person put on a play, everybody going to the play, even though the society as a whole running down gay people, right? So I was thinking it is select. And you know, don't look to the class where you come from, your background, color, skin, whatever the reasons for that. It speaks to our own hypocrisy. So if we look within ourselves at our hypocrisy, we would realize, and I think that would be a part of how we can re-educate ourselves, the ones who still need to be, because even if I think I'm open-minded about a lot of things now that I wasn't, and I still probably have issues that I have to get better and understand better. You know what I mean? So I'm saying that but if we realize it, like Kellen, I would say to you, definitely on the next program that you'll be doing something like this, number one, to me, I would say to you, have somebody from law enforcement who deals with cybercrime.
That's right. That's the plan.
And have them right there, and have them make sure and repeat it. And I would say every time somebody share a video, somebody should be sharing a clip right next to it, saying so like, and I would say to people, if they share it back, let's say we had a clip, everybody had a clip that you could have on your phone, and somebody send you porn, and you can send them back that clip. right? Yeah, when it's revenge porn like that, it will be an education lesson that can help, right? It may be an education lesson that could help, and it might solve the problem and part of the problem, I should say. But definitely, we need to let people know on that side. The next side we have to let know is that we cannot continue. We cannot continue as a society to think we want to go forward if we still living in a backwards thing. So we need those laws off of the books, right? We need to be more accepting of people for who they are. Well, all I'm saying to you is I'm not encouraging anybody to become gay or to be straight. You be who you are.
Well, Bobby, the counter argument from the conservative elements of Grenadian society would be two, and I can hear it now. One, that you are attempting to force a particular agenda down their throats. And two, you avoid of Christian morality by supporting notions of what's it now? Abomination. Yes. Your rebuttal to that.
I would say to them, I am not judging anybody, because I know that when time comes, if I believe in God, which I do believe in a creator, I don't believe in the churches, like I say to you, I believe in a creator, right? I want him to judge me on me. I want him to judge me on how best, if I made mistakes, judge me on those mistakes, but judge me on me. If I'm going in front of him, based on all that I have known about the Bible and read the Bible, and I'm hypocritical, that I am running down one gay person, but going and spend my money by the next one, and I'm by the next one, I know that that same God they're talking to me about is going to be judging me much harder, right? So I'm saying, let us be straight about it. Let people be themselves. If they're bringing their lifestyle onto you, that is a different issue. And that is an issue that has to be looked at as well. But so long as they're not bringing their lifestyle to you, that video had nothing to do with anybody else besides those people in that room. Nothing, right? It's coming out because somebody decided to hurt one of the people in that room, right? That is why it's out, and that's why it's spreading. But nowhere did that person bring that and say, okay, I'm coming into your house and I'm doing this in front of you and I'm trying to make you become gay or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? And to me, we really need to get past that. And Kellan, it's another story, but you know, for us, yourself, in our society, sometimes the ones that hide a lot behind religion are the ones who are doing the most wrong. I'm just saying that and leaving that out there for you, huh? All right?
All right. So we would stick a pin, and I see Kenita's laughing here. We would stick a pin. We will take a quick break, and we'll come back for some closing comments from the panel. Why would we have ambassadors representing the state that do not understand clearly what their terms of reference are?
To the cards that I have drawn, that I am the minister at this point in time. And for members of the public...
But you're also a servant of the people. The unions are not threatening to withdraw their labor, and neither are they threatening to shut the country down, as you did.
I think your summarization of my position is highly inaccurate, and may I dare say a bit inflammatory.
The strategy did not work the last time for you. So what would make this?
Well, you're assuming that we're doing the same strategy.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to the program. We are discussing issues of revenge pornography as it intersects with human sexuality and mental health. And at this time, I wish to offer the panelists an opportunity for closing comments. Kenita, I would start with you. And again, thank you. I know you are in the middle of traveling, so I really thank you for taking the time to appear on the program this week. So over to you for some closing comments.
Kellan, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I think the collaborative work we do with GrenChap in Grenada is continuous. And I mean, today I can only speak to this audience and to you and fellow panelists because, you know, they felt it was fitting. And it's certainly with them and through them that my voice is being heard here today. I think as we look at revenge porn of any nature, whether it be of gay men, lesbian women, straight couples, we think about the impact of those videos and what it means to the individuals that has just been exposed in that kind of nature. We recognize that this is something that has been ongoing. And so we are very happy to see most of the countries now with enforceable electronic crimes bills. But as those bills are now enacted, how is it actually being implemented? And I think this is the action that we need to see from our police, or understanding how those things are moving forward. We have seen way too many crimes against LGBT persons, which do not necessarily get justice. And so we do hope that the due process in those cases actually move forward. But to the general public, I say, I know we have been socialized and culturalized in a particular way. But what I do ask persons for is not just empathy and compassion, but checking your own bias and your own privilege as we continuously deal with human beings. Sexuality and gender identity of individuals do not take them out of the diverse and yet inclusive wave of humans as citizens. And I think when we decide to share a video or even forward a video, think if that video was yours, would you share it? So just have those kind of check-ins as individuals as we continue to try to build a community and develop a country. And so I do say thank you very much again for the opportunity, but let us just try to be human to each other as the world continues in its chaos.
Bobby.
Well, Kalan, first of all, I really want to thank you for having me on the program, right? Because it hopefully it lends more voice outside to something. And I want to say this because I don't want to call on the individual's friends around him alone. I don't know where I would fit into his things. Maybe our acquaintance. We met many years ago. We haven't been in touch for many years. But I'm going to say this to him. I'm a friend. I'm a friend. I appreciate what you have done and achieved for our country musically, right? I appreciate you as a character in terms of how you handle situations with me. And if he came out and he had a show and they had to have one person that would go and support that show, it would be me. Because I won't be judging if I'm going to support that show based on what is his sexuality. That's his business. That's his private life. Right, I'm going to go and support that show because I think he is one of the best artists that I have ever come across in our country, right? And the awards he has won over the years speaks to that, right? And the individual. And I really do hope, because this show was centered around him to an extent because of he's a person in limelight. And I say, you know, everything can change based on one individual, right? If we change how we think, and if everybody decides to know the individual that you're going to hate on rather than listen to other people or choosing to hate them on what you thought, how your parents taught you to learn, and things that they themselves have already changed out of, right? I think it starts there, right? And to people who continue to do this, I continue to say, when somebody shares videos that they have had with individuals and whatever, and it's meant to hurt, that's your individual hurt. You're looking for company in pain, right? You have a hurt inside of you, and you might not recognize it, but you're sharing that because you're looking for company in pain. But that's not the answer. That's not the answer to get your comfort. All right? There's got to be a better way. Right? Seek counseling. Something is wrong in you to have done that to an individual. All right? And hopefully we can become a better people, a better society going forward. Right? But it's a good issue that we need to get this support behind people who have suffered from him, and not just speaking for him on that line. We need to support everybody, you know? All right? And thanks again. Everybody stay safe.
Absolutely, Bobby. Thank you. Thank you. And Bobby, of course, you need to come back to talk about Carnival, because we gave a commitment to have the conversation on Carnival actually before And Kanita as well, I hope to have you back again. These are conversations that need to continue to happen. So I want to thank both of you again for appearing on the Bubb Report. Kanita Placide, as well as Robert Ashley Steele from Grenada. Viewers and listeners, again, we wish to thank you for your participation on this week's episode of the Bubb Report. Now, next week, we will be being laser focused on the 2023 budget that will be read next week in the Houses of Parliament in Grenada. The implications of the budget, especially for the health sector of the country, because health, in fact, would be one of the major priority areas for the government of Grenada in this budget. So that and more on the next episode of the Bubb Report. On behalf of the hard-working producers of the program, I am your host, your humble servant, Dr. Kellen Bubb. Thank you again for watching and have a productive and safe week ahead. Bye-bye.